It's a Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. I didn't get a ton of sleep, and I know Damichael Cole didn't. We have a ton to break down. Grizzlies, Lakers, Grizzlies, Celtics tonight on national television, and of course, the Zach Kleiman media availability in air quotes. What does it all mean in the wake of Taylor Jenkins being let go as head coach? Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mullinax, and it's always a good day when I say one of your hosts, because that means the dynamic duo rides once more. Damichael Cole, my wonderful co-host, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, and I'm going to brag on my partner because he won't do it. If you're not following him at Damichael C, if you don't have a subscription to the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis like I do, you're missing out. Damichael did a phenomenal job covering the craziness of the last 72 hours. We thought it was going to be a quiet weekend, partner. We thought that it was going to be just a focus on the Lakers game and the importance of that. It was the exact opposite of that. And I know, I did a radio hit in Los Angeles. I did a podcast hit with B-Ball Breakdown. I know if I'm getting calls, you're getting that times 10. So I'm very proud to say you're my partner. I thought you did a phenomenal job covering all of this craziness. And I know you'll continue to do so as time goes on. Absolutely. So we're going to get right back into it. But first, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you are checking out Locked On Grizzlies, and also make sure you're checking out our Locked On Daily newsletter. My newsletter today, spoiler alert, is my first chance in newsletter form to react to the firing of Taylor Jenkins. Make sure you're subscribing, checking it out at LockedOnDaily.com. That plus NBA analysis as the playoffs approach, fantasy basketball advice, and so much more. So, Michael, we'll get back into the Jenkins aftermath, the Zach Kleiman availability. And for those of you watching on YouTube, I might put it in air quotes every time I say the word availability, because 2 minutes and 40 seconds is not being very available. There's lots of things in life. If it went for 2 minutes and 40 seconds, you'd be pretty pissed off. And I'll leave it at that. But we'll lead off here with the Grizzlies playing in a way. I was talking to Matt Moore at HP Basketball on X. He does a lot of stuff with Locked On NBA, Locked On Nuggets. I was talking to him throughout the weekend. And, one of the things we talked about was the game had a similar result, but it looked different, right? Obviously, the rotation, Zach Edey being reinserted, the issues defensively were the same but different at the same time. It was kind of weird. And, from watching the game and looking at how the stats played out, on the positive side, it looked more like what you would expect from this Grizzlies team moving forward, assuming that Morant, Bane, and Jackson Jr. are all here for the long term. The three of those guys combined for over 70 points, right? Almost, I think maybe over 80 points. That's kind of what you would want to see from them. Jaren and Dez in particular had tremendous games. Ja, kudos to him. First game back after a lengthy absence, posting a double-double, 10 assists to 4 turnovers. That's pretty good in terms of his usage. So all three of them played well in most regards, especially Jaren. Jaren dominated
with the foul trouble.
Quarter. Absolutely. But then there's the reality of, and what we'll talk about more later on in the show, and I posted this on X and it got some decent traction. You have Ja Morant defending Austin Reeves, and Austin Reeves almost had a triple-double. You have Desmond Bane defending LeBron James. And if you need a lot of explanation as to why that's problematic, I can give it to you, but chances are if you're an everydayer of Locked On Grizzlies, why that's not good. And then you have Jalen Wells, who I've talked about before, having a very strong rookie season, probably first team all rookie this coming off season when they announce those awards. Him being assigned the duty of defending Luka Doncic, who at worst is the 4th or 5th best player on the planet. I think you can make a pretty easy argument he's 3rd best on the planet behind SGA and Jokic, whichever order you prefer on those two. So the point that I'm trying to make is, regardless of who the coach is, right? Isolo had his first game. Again, we mentioned Edey being reinserted. Maybe you can add some context into some things that you noticed that were a little bit different from Coach Jenkins. But there was a lot of stuff that was the same, like 11 guys playing in the first quarter, like the minute limitations in spots, the way that the rotation was put out there. Only so much can change in such a drastic environment. I understand that, but it was one of those things where the more it changed, the more it stayed the same. Outside of seeing Ja, Dez, and Jaren, at least for one night, in a game that was extremely important to the Grizzlies. The Lakers are a game or two away from clinching a playoff spot now, whereas Memphis is, a game or two from being in the play-in. That game on Saturday had massive ramifications.
Massive ramifications indeed. And I mean, there's a lot to kind of focus on here and what went wrong. I don't know why. I'll start with Zach Kleiman. And look, the good was you saw with Isolo's new look. Remember, we talked about the fact that he's more of a pick and roll guy. And if you saw the first couple of possessions of the game, the Grizzlies went right into it. More pick and roll, and that is something, he said he's going to do. He's going to feature the key guys more. You're going to see Morant, Desmond Bane, those guys being featured more, so we don't, go those long first halves where it's like Dez has 5 shot attempts or 4 shot attempts, and people like Dez has to get more in the flow. So he's trying to, eliminate those things from happening as much. But you said as much as things are different, they're the same. And going to Zach Edey, the opportunity was there, right? And he took advantage of it. He had a double-double. The Lakers too small. He was active. All those things being said, there were some defensive concerns there where we saw him kind of get pulled late in the game and not put back in because the Lakers started to put him in some actions. And then, too, at the same time, the other thing is the Lakers were a smaller team. So I'm encouraged by what we saw from Zach Edey. And it was a really good performance. I don't want to take anything away from that, but let's see it against some of these bigger teams. The Lakers got one big man, and he's a big man that probably wouldn't start for anybody else. So with that being said, you want to see Zach Edey stack these performances when you got to go against, like in a couple days here. I mean, these next couple games, you're going to go against a little bit bigger front courts. I mean, Golden State's front court isn't just huge, but still some really good tests. Whereas the Lakers are playing Jared Vanderbilt at the 5 or for a decent amount and Rui Hachimura, and that just ain't going to work. So, that was encouraging. But when you take the Zach Edey part out of it, and you mentioned the big three with Ja, Dez, and Jaren and how well they played, it did look the exact same. And, look, I don't want to go too long into this point because we've talked about the Taylor Jenkins firing enough. Look, I'm okay with the decision to fire Taylor Jenkins. I'm okay with it. It's fine. The timing of it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I understand the team was reeling. I've been seeing it as much as anybody. I see how the players have reacted to him. I see all of that, and I've written about all of that, and I see it all. But at the same time, it's 9 games. How much can Twomasi Salo really do with his team? And it's not just 9 games. In this case, now it's 8 games left. You talk about 2 back-to-backs. Like, they have a back-to-back starting today, and then they have another back-to-back later in the season. So
they had no practice on Sunday and no shoot-around this morning.
No shoot-around today, yeah.
So, literally, aside from undocumented, and you would know better on this than me, they probably come in, get treatment, watch film, things that aren't necessarily open to media consumption. Yeah. Outside of that, nothing is going to be installed or tweaked between the end of the Lakers game and the start of tonight's game.
Yeah, it's as Ja Morant said, he said, it's not much we can do. And with that being the case, then you probably should just wrote it out the last 9 or so games with Taylor Jenkins, and then as soon as that playoff series ended, sayonara, see you. But yeah, look, they showed fight, and it's 2 ways to look at this thing, Joe. You could be the person who says, man, Isalo really made some second half adjustments against the Lakers. We saw a team that played harder. We saw more defensive effort, and you saw encouraging results from the Grizzlies in the second half. Or you could be the person who plays devil's advocate here. And you know what you could say? The Grizzlies got off to a slow start in this game, and they played better over the course of the game. That isn't new, Joe. We've seen that a bunch over the last month. How many times have we talked about the Grizzlies having these quarters, where, they have these big quarters that they give up, and Taylor Jenkins talked about it. He said we were bleeding points. They had those stretches, and then they would eventually lock in and kind of, focus back in. Sometimes they come back and win, and a lot of the times they came back and they still lost. And that was the case in this game. So, yeah, depends on what side of the coin you're on. Like, talking to the players after the game, they say, yeah, we came in at halftime. We corrected some things, re-emphasized some things, and we figured some stuff out. Time is going to tell if that's really the case or if it's just same old, get off to a slow start, get some urgency and then try to work your way back in before it's too late.
Something that we can talk about more as the days and weeks go on toward, I'm guessing, you and I are going to be on the same page with this. A first round exit is what the direction looks like at this moment. A lot can still change in the next couple of weeks, but that is where we are in the here and now. The exact same thing would have happened if Taylor Jenkins was still the head coach. So if anything, I feel bad for Isolo, because if this is his on-the-job interview, if he goes 3-5 and then is the 6th seed and loses in 5 or even a sweep to whoever the 3 seed winds up being, why in the world would you hire that person? Why? You know what? We saw a lot from him. You saw the exact same freaking thing that you would have seen from Taylor Jenkins. So if anything, I feel bad for him because he's in a lose-lose situation. We're going to talk more about that here on Locked On Grizzlies in the days and weeks to come. Let us know how you're feeling about Grizzlies Lakers at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax. Hit us up in the comments. When we come back, we are going to discuss the Zach Kleiman availability to the media in the lead up to Grizzlies Lakers this past Saturday. Stick around. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Game Time. I'm a big fan of Game Time. I know Damichael is as well. Make sure you're going and checking them out if you have not already done so. And the fun thing with Game Time is that they can help you watch basketball live. The energy of the crowd, the sound of sneakers on the hardwood, a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes it easy to get tickets. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks even highlights super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. And with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Love that tagline. Fun stuff. I'll tell you what I don't love, Damichael. I don't love media availabilities that last 2 minutes and 40 seconds. There's a family-friendly show, so I'm not going to go too far down this route. But I'm going to do my best because I want to stress. I'm fortunate that I had media access when I was there in Memphis a few weeks ago.
Yep.
The Grizzlies, the staff there have been nothing but friendly and personable to me. But
sure.
I got to shoot it straight. And this is my opinion, not the opinion of my partner, Damichael Cole. He has a different situation than I do in covering this team. If I had to sit there and watch Zach Kleiman, who had 2 minutes and 40 seconds of his time that he was able to give to the media assembled, including my partner, Damichael Cole, say the things that he said, including responsibility, the word responsibility 10 times it seemed. And that's all he talks about. And really over and over and over again, not giving anything of substance beyond that statement. And you have other pieces and articles like Damichael's over the weekend that talked about how there was conflict, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth. Feel free to correct me at any point. That say Taylor and Kleiman butted heads. They would point fingers. It was the Spider-Man meme, right? Whose fault is it? Who's the problem? Okay. As with most things in life, the answer is both. Okay. Taylor Jenkins had lots of issues, and I agree with you on what you said earlier in the show. Taylor Jenkins being fired, I have no problem with it, and I would argue I was one of the biggest Jenkins apologists, more so than you. I would say I was in the camp of Jenkins, but I have said over and over again these last few months that has changed, right? Something happened as the calendar turned to 2025, and when you look at this team and you can't say that the defense is where they hang their hat anymore, he lost that team somewhere along the way. He did. Okay. But guess what? That team, that roster is inherently flawed.
Yeah.
You have John Morant having to defend somebody that he is not going to be able to defend at this stage. He's just not. You have Jalen Wells and Desmond Bane having to defend players that they are not able to defend. And you have somebody on that opposing roster and Dorian Finney-Smith, who, according to all reports that I've read, you were 5 yards from the goal line on him being on your team. And yet you had pick protections and you had other things that you were trying to tweak and turn, and the Lakers swooped in at the last minute. If that's not true, here's a crazy idea, Zach. You have a media wing called Grind City Media. How about you do a 30-minute sit down with somebody? Huh? I respect all those guys over there. They do phenomenal work. Mike Wallace is an amazing journalist. Sit down with Mike if you don't want to sit down with Damichael or Drew Hill or somebody like that. Give the fans something more than 2 minutes and 40 seconds, because that's ridiculous. And I'm speaking as a fan of the team. You just did something that is unprecedented in the history of the NBA. Only Larry Brown has been fired with similar wins in the entire history of the association. And you did it with 9 games left. And all you can do is give people 2 minutes and 40 seconds of explanation? That's absurd. So if you don't want to sit down with Damichael or Drew or Chris Harrington, fine. Sit down with somebody in your organization that is part of that media group and give a better explanation than I take full responsibility, because your actions say the exact opposite.
Yeah, it was a little surprising that we only talked so much with Zach. And quite frankly, understanding the tenor of the situation, I didn't expect him to say a lot, so to speak, but I completely understand your perspective, because from the fan perspective, fans, like Zach said to us a couple times, the focus is on LA. Fans were not focused on the Lakers. Fans were focused on what's going to happen next for this organization. Quite frankly, this isn't intel or anything like that. Of course, the players are always going to be excited to play a game, but you can't tell me it isn't in their minds like, man, who's going to be coaching us next? And this is just a day.
Especially if it's true. If it's true that the players had no idea it was coming, the responsibility is mine, and I didn't consult the players. Okay, if that's true, John Morant has only known Taylor Jenkins his entire career.
Yep.
Desmond Bane has only known Taylor Jenkins his entire career. This is their first time. Josh said it himself. His first exposure to the business of the NBA. So their mind's going to be on LA? You're giving fluff, man. You are not respecting the highly intelligent fan base and media structure there in Memphis, Tennessee, and it frustrates me. It frustrates me as someone that's been a part of it for over a decade. They are smarter than you're giving them credit for. Yeah. Give them something more. Even if you want it to be in your controlled environment, there needs to be something more. There needs to be a deeper explanation, because this makes it look like your house is on fire and you don't have the means to put it out. And if that's not the case, you need to actually say that and not just say that you took responsibility. Because right now you look like, if you took responsibility, that you set the freaking fire in the first place. That's the responsibility that you're taking.
Yeah, that was his whole message, right? It was, this decision was mine and mine only. He said that a couple times. He said the focus was on the Lakers a couple times. And of course, going into it, fans wanted us, hey, make sure you ask this question. Make sure you ask that question. Truth be told, as Joe's pointed out a couple times, it was 2 minutes and 40 seconds. We didn't get a chance to. We got a chance to ask a couple times about, the future of the head coaching position and whatnot. And Zach said the focus was on the Lakers. So this isn't something that, he wanted to talk about. And look, these things happen in terms of, these firings during the season. And Joe, you just pointed out, how unprecedented it is, for a coach of Taylor Jenkins' stature. Whatever you think about him, look, he won a lot of games here. It's all-time winners coaching Grizzlies franchise history. And he was on the way to leading them probably to the playoffs again. So, outside, that's why the perspective of fans league-wide was like, why? Of course, we have our own perspectives here. We watch the Grizzlies every day. We see the little kinks, right? We see the rotation adjustments and, certain things and the same defensive mistakes. But at the same time, what the other people on the outside see, they see wins and losses. And sometimes that's what the game comes down to. It's really that simple. And the Grizzlies have won a lot of games. So when you factor all of those things in, it wasn't even just that us, like, people wanted and deserved, an explanation. And, I get, not throwing Taylor under the bus or anything like that, but there's a professional way to do it. And look, Kleiman did speak. I'll give him that. And I say that because we've seen a couple times this year, and I'm going to point out a couple different situations. In Sacramento, the GM did not speak when They made
that's a fair point.
They did not speak when Mike Brown was let go. I remember people saying that De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, like the players were left kind of to speak to the organization, kind of threw the players out there. Zach Kleiman was the only one who was made available to us that morning at shoot around. So he spoke, quote unquote, for the Grizzlies organization, at that time. So he did take responsibility in that way. But here's the other thing, Joe. And this is, I think, more to the point that you are making. He spoke to us for 2.5 minutes. We didn't really get a lot more context into the situation that the fans, not for my own good. I mean, this is more, we're here to get the answers for the fans and things like that. So we didn't get much, from that 2.5 minutes. And then I used the other example, just like we talked about in Sacramento. Look, Nico Harrison, right? This is the guy that made, a trade that's almost had Dallas. Dallas looked like they was about to be set on fire, figuratively speaking. But you know what he did? He came in there that next day, stood in there in front of the media. Him and Jason Kidd sat side by side, and he took the heat for a while. It wasn't all right. That's it. I'm gone. He took the heat for a while. So look, it's a couple perspectives to this thing, and I'm glad he did come speak or whatever the case may be. But we didn't get much from it. And there are examples on both ends where, a guy in Sacramento who didn't speak, but I'm looking more towards, Nico and what he did in terms of he stood there in the heat after making one of the wildest trades we'd ever seen.
This is not as shocking as the Luka Doncic trade, but it's a tier below it. It's a tier below it. And you have to give a better explanation than what has been given to this point. And that's not in defense of Taylor Jenkins thinking that he should still have his job. If this exact same choice had been made the day after Memphis got knocked out of the playoffs, I would not blink an eye. I would not blink an eye. I would say that's probably the right decision. But this deserves more of an explanation. So again, whether it's through a sit down with Damichael Cole, that would be my vote, but I'm biased. Whether it's your own organization that you have there. And again, there's plenty of amazing Jess Benson, Roser, Chris Vernon has amazing interview skills. You have, I would argue, one of the best team-based media branches in the entire league. Sit down.
Media.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, sit down with them. If you don't want to do it with an independent outlet, go for it. They're right there. You have an opportunity to maybe not make this right because it was pretty broken, but you have the opportunity to explain your rationale more than I took responsibility, because down the road, you're going to be taking responsibility for the Marcus Smart trade, and you're going to be taking responsibility for quadrupling down on youth, and you're going to be taking responsibility for the start of the John Morant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. primes, resulting in a first-round exit, because it's not fair to give it to the head coach now. That guy's gone. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to wrap up this episode of the show talking about Grizzlies Celtics tonight. Again, there's a basketball game. Who knew? We'll talk about it next. Stick around. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host, Joe Mullinax. I'm trying to calm down a little bit with my partner here, Damichael Cole, the Commercial Appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. Well, no, but it's, again,
we got to let it out. Yeah.
I have, and this is your career. Again, the dynamic between you and I is very different. This is your career. I have been invested in one way or another in this franchise for 14 years now.
Yeah.
And I feel it from a media perspective because I have covered the team in that way. But I also feel it as a fan. It's just a frustrating situation when you have people reaching out to you, when you read national articles like The Athletic. If people want to be mad about what's in your article, good Lord, go read The Athletic. Like they make it seem like things are not all smooth in Memphis, Tennessee. And that's a national branch of the media that, again, we've talked about it before. We love Memphis, Tennessee, smallest market in the NBA. The Athletic puts out a piece and the window gets opened a little bit more in terms of what people are looking at. So I think that, again, it's not the choice, it's the way that it's been handled. That is my biggest concern. But regardless, Taylor Jenkins no longer a part of the organization. Boston Celtics are in town. It's a national televised game. I looked at the line ahead of this show, Damichael, and I got to be honest with you, I was surprised that the Boston Celtics are only 4.5-point favorites as of this moment. I don't know why a team that is 5-0 in their last 5 games playing a team that is 1-4 in their last 5 games. Why you would think that the Grizzlies, who just lost to the Lakers by 7, are going to be able to hang with the Celtics in that manner. But apparently the Sharks are bigger fans of the Grizzlies than I am at this point. So how can Memphis keep this close? Because I know Jaylen Brown is a game time decision. I don't know if there's been
the one
update.
name.
And maybe they're thinking he doesn't play. But even if he doesn't play, there's been countless examples this season of Boston just chugging along because of how deep their top 7 or 8 guys are. Yeah,
and even less about Boston, because you point out, great points about. One, they're on a roll right now, and it makes sense for them to be on the road because this is a team. Quite frankly, they're the 2 seed in the East right now, and nobody's batting an eye. Like, shout out to Cleveland and what they're doing, but at the end of the day, Boston's going to be the favorite because a lot of people feel that they can flip that switch because they're champions, right?
A Boston Thunder Finals is going to be almost the unanimous prediction as the playoffs get started.
Exactly. So when you factor that in, them playing well right now is kind of predictable because it's almost that time. You can smell it. You can smell the playoffs around the corner. On the Grizzlies side of things, it's still this adjustment, a part of now. I don't want to overstate it because, talking to the players, and they've talked about the fact that a lot of these things are just being reemphasized. They're little small tweaks, as they've called them. It's not some overhaul, as Isalo said himself. They're not overhauling the offense. He said that we still have the 6th best offensive net rating in the NBA. That's what he said going into the game, against the Lakers. So he's a big net rating guy, apparently. Like he talked about, that's a stat that he really pays attention to. So he's a net rating guy. We know Taylor was into some deeper stats like points per possession when you touch the paint and things like that. So a little bit different, perspective here. But I'm really interested, if we get into the matchups of this game, because it's a similar kind of outlook from what we were talking about at the beginning. I'm really interested in how much do the Grizzlies take from that first matchup against the Celtics, in which they won, and apply here. Here's the point that I want to make. If you'll remember it, Joe, and everyone, it was it stood out as much as a lot of these matchups this season. When they played Boston, Jaren Jackson Jr., I think, was the matchup, but he guarded Drew Holiday, and you talk about putting words in quotes, guarded in quotes. They pretty much said, Drew Holiday beat us. Tatum, you ain't doing it. Jaylen Brown, you ain't doing it. Derek White, you ain't beating us. I think Porzingis had just got back. Yeah, he did, because Ja had that dunk. But they said, Drew's going to have to beat us. And Drew is like, they're giving me all these open shots, and he kept shooting, and he shot so many shots in that game. And he didn't, I think he was, if I remember correctly, this is off the dome, Joe. I hope you can look this up.
I'll look it up for you.
He, I think he shot 5 of 17 from 3-point range or something like that in that game.
This was the game in Boston, right?
Yep. This was in Boston. Okay. This was the Grizzlies. The last
Grizzlies
it up
game. Now.
Yeah, okay. And I'll keep talking until you pull it up. But yeah, they pretty much focused on Drew Holiday having to be the guy that beat him. That was a Taylor Jenkins hallmark. Taylor Jenkins, when they played Derek Jones when he was in Dallas, when they played Herb Jones when he was in New Orleans, and so many other cases, they would find one guy, Jaden McDaniels with the Timberwolves, and they would say, that's going to be the guy. We're going to make him beat us. We're going to sag off him, and he makes a bunch of threes, so be it. And if he doesn't, Rui Hachimura, they did it with him that game 1 against the Lakers in the playoffs, and we see Rui make them stop doing that real quickly.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of examples in the Taylor Jenkins era of the Grizzlies where they said, that's the guy we're going to make beat us. What do you do in this situation, Joe? Do you say, that worked last time, let's still make Drew Holiday beat us? Or you say, this is Thomas Isalo's team now, we're going to do it our own way, and you come out with your own defensive mindset and scheme. I'm really curious to see how they handle that.
Drew Holiday, 8 for 26 from the field overall, 4 for 17 from 3.
4 for 17. I said 5. So
4 for 17. You were right there. Peyton Pritchard shot 6 for 11 from 3.
I bet he did.
But the biggest thing to point out with this, and the reason I'm still surprised that number is so low.
26 shots for Drew Holiday.
Jason Tatum shot the ball 21 times, 6 for 21, 1 for 10 from 3. Kristaps Porzingis, 6 of 17 from the field, 3 for 10 from 3. The Boston Celtics, who, kind of famously, their whole game
they
is
get
built
them up
around shooting threes. They got them up in this game, probably for more than 2 minutes and 40 seconds. 30% shooting, 18 of 60 from beyond the arc for the Boston Celtics. I think it's fair to clarify that as a off night for Boston. So is it possible they have another off night? Yeah, sure, it's possible. And I do think the Celtics come in.
Was the second leg of a back-to-back to them too, if I remember correctly.
And the Celtics come in and they have no idea what this version of the Grizzlies will look like. Again, logic stands that it's going to look similar to the previous version. But again, you can't go back and watch previous film in terms of game plan specific things like the holiday defense that you just talked about. You have no idea if they're going to do that again. They might run the same sets. They might run the same defensive rotations and things like that. But the thing specific to Drew Holiday, are they going to keep that type of energy? That's going to be what bears to watch here tonight. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure you'll be there in person in the forum. Hopefully you're able to take a nap a little bit today before you go to the game. I know you haven't gotten much sleep. But make sure you're following Damichael at Damichael C. Make sure you're following me at Joe Mullinax. I won't be there covering the game, but I will be watching, and I will be with you tomorrow solo. Again, a back-to-back kind of situation. Damichael and I kind of splitting the workload. I'll be with you solo for the Tuesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, and I'll be talking about Grizzlies Celtics. I'll also be talking about Grizzlies Warriors, and maybe I'll be talking about the lawsuit that the Grizzlies filed against me for yelling at them so aggressively in the second segment. Probably not, but still lots to break down in the wake of all of this craziness to Michael. And again, I want to stress just on my end, it's an opportunity for the organization to not insult the intelligence of the fan base. We can take it. If there's something, I understand that you're not going to give all the goods away. But something better than 160 seconds of it's my responsibility. I made the call. I'm not absolving myself of anything. What are you not absolving yourself of? A little bit more depth would be nice, but lots of basketball at least to discuss heading into our Tuesday edition of the show.
Yeah, a lot of basketball to discuss. Houston keeps winning, so you can almost just check out the idea of catching them.
As of this recording, Houston is winning by 31 over the Phoenix Suns. 31 points.
And we saw what just happened, in the game against the Lakers. Lakers have the season series now 3-1 against the Grizzlies. So even though they're one game up in the loss column, it's basically a 2-game lead because you have to win more games than the Lakers this season to win that advantage. And then the Nuggets, you still have the tiebreaker between those two coming up, but the Nuggets have won some games lately. So they're in a difficult position now to jump higher than the 5 spot. But you got to win these games coming up. Celtics is a very good team. But if you want to avoid even potentially falling to 6, where the Warriors are lurking from behind and you play them on Tuesday, you got to rack up some wins.
Michael, I know you know this. I'm preaching to the choir here. We keep talking about the 6 seed. We keep talking about the 6 seed. We keep talking about the 6 seed. The Memphis Grizzlies, as of this moment, are a game and a half away from the Minnesota Timberwolves in the 7th seed. A Minnesota Timberwolves team that just beat the Detroit Pistons by 19. So you and me might be doing a play-in preview of Locked On Grizzlies here in a week or so if the Grizzlies don't figure it out. And again, we can't blame Taylor Jenkins anymore. So who is the fault going to fall on there? Shouldn't be the guy who, was thrust into the position with 9 games to go. And I'll leave it at that. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make Locked On Grizzlies a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. Also, make sure you're checking out LockedOnDaily.com, subscribing to our daily newsletter. It is free. Grizzlies written words from me in your inbox each and every day, plus NBA analysis, fantasy basketball advice, and so much more. For Damichael Cole, I am Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in. Thank you for being with us. We had a pretty successful weekend between my individual reaction episode, what comes next from Damichael. We were busy here on the channel with all the news with Taylor Jenkins, but you guys were there with us, and we really, truly appreciate it. Hopefully you'll stick with us the rest of the way through the season and whatever the postseason winds up looking like. For Damichael, I'm Joe. Stay locked in. Grizzlies Celtics tonight, Grizzlies Warriors tomorrow. Lots to discuss over the next several days here on Locked On Grizzlies.